Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Alliance on the Move. This program comes to you every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Tonight, I have the pleasure of having with us the leader of the Alliance to Change, Mr. Kimraj Ramjatan, also an executive member of the AFC and a member of parliament, Mr. Devin Sears, and myself, Joretta Fernand, member of parliament, executive member of the Alliance to Change. So, guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope that you're going to enjoy the 1 hour that we have. We have tons of information to give to you, so much to discuss this evening. But before we get into the topics, allow me to just invite Mr. Devin Sears and Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan to give their opening remarks. We'll start with you, Mr. Sears.
Thank you so much, Joretta, for having me on this program. And to all our viewers across the world, we want to say God's richest blessings. And, I trust that you're keeping safe, especially since we're faced with this global pandemic, which we call COVID-19. So we're looking forward for you to share the live and also call your neighbor and tell a friend that, look, Alliance on the Move is on.
Thank you very much to Joretta. Love to be back here on Alliance on the Move in Berbice, and glad for the viewership. As a matter of fact, I noticed that our viewership is climbing almost every weekend now, and I'm getting calls from a lot of the sugar workers. I must tell you, the trouble is that I have gotten a little rough with them because, a number of them, close friends of mine and some associates, quite frankly, I've been telling them that I warned you as to what was supposed to be coming if, made bad choices. And so that is why I wanted to raise this evening on the show a number of issues pertaining to sugar workers again, and also to deal with some of the aspects of fishery. Almost all the artisanal fishermen in Guyana, they're having hard time. And I think it has started since that dumping of the water from the Exxon wells into the ocean, very high temperatured water, and mixed with some other, what you call the oil and probably some other things that have been causing reduced production by all the fishermen. I only this afternoon from an extremely important trawler owner, I heard that is also the case. And they have been affected almost 1/5. Their productions have gone down too as a result. So when they send their trawler out there, when they extend 70,000, they're only getting about 8,000-9,000 and so on. And that is not good enough. So it is important that we talk on these issues. And of course, the Bariat that went to Dubai and a number of other things.
But Mr. Ramstan, thank you so much for raising those. I know for sure when we talk about fishing, and so these are not things that we're just saying. We're not just saying that there's a decrease in production and all of that, because if we check the half-year report that came out, those numbers would reflect and it would be back into and give fact. These are facts that we're giving to you this evening. We just don't come here and just say something because we want to say it. The half-year report also stated that we have in the fishing industry, we have a decline there. But Mr. Ramsden, before we get into that, I want you to have a little bit of more discussion when it comes to the issue at Blairmont. We know the PPP, when we were in office, the PPP went out every single day and they told the sugar workers that we were doing such a horrible job at this and that. And when they came in, they're going to turn the industry around and it's going to be great and it's going to be lovely. What's going on there? What are the sugar workers saying to you today?
Well, there is a problem with the Blairmont estate workers who are indicating that they have to travel very early in the morning, about 4 o'clock, to reach Blairmont from the various other places that they come out from to work. And then in the afternoon, they sometimes get caught up at the bridge and they reach home around 7 to 8 o'clock in the evenings. And as a result, they would like to have a 2-hour pay for the day for that kind of traveling to get to the place of work as an additional income for them. Because, of course, their wives got to get up probably 3 o'clock in the morning to cook their food. And look, as I've said, this industry is a disaster for family life. It is a disaster for community life when you got to wake up 3 o'clock in the morning and then arrive at work for about 5:30, 6 o'clock, start your cane cutting. And now, because of the distance to be traveled and all the problems at the bridge and whatever, whenever there's closing and so on, they're coming home instead of 4 in the afternoon, they're coming home till 7 and so on. And the people are asking for 2 hours for that transportation. They're not getting it. And they're saying that, of course, certain managers, like I think one was named Mr. Griffith, who is responding in very rough terms with them. And of course, GAU is taking an approach whereby they are being placatory to the government and GAISUCO rather than taking up the work of the interest of the sugar workers. And that is why they went on a big strike today. It is serious problems there. Of course, we know that Albion, Gang 17, and a number of other sugar workers across the country, they have been talking about increased wages. They have been talking about this 250,000 relief, that they should also be beneficiaries of that. And it is true. These you can't go and double dip, as we think I talked about the last program, and pay sugar workers who have already been paid their severance. They're earning income from another source. A lot of them are earning from hire car drivers. They have become, they have gotten other jobs. Some have become carpenters. Some have become masons. Some have become agricultural producers who also benefited from the flood relief and all of that. So to go and give them an additional 250 alone, as against the actual 11,000 workers, they are very vexed about that. So these kinds of what I call perverse incentives, that is what the economists call it, perverse incentives to a certain section that is becoming more and more riotous in the sugar industry. The PPP is having some hard times, and they will play the hard. They're going to play it rough with these people. They don't really care about them. A lot of people feel that GAU and all of them care. They don't. I've been warning them. The best government for them was the one that was taking them out of sugar. Sugar doesn't have a big future. And again, you check the world market prices for sugar today, Sis Narayan would know that it is being lowered all the time. And it is, just there. And what we are seeing is that if we were to sell our sugar at that world market price, we will be making losses. So the thing is a black hole. It is just going to suck our monies in. And it is better that we had done as we had done, right-size the industry. But they play hard is, and they're going to suffer for it. And a lot of sugar workers are suffering from it. What is also happening in the sugar industry is that just like what has happened to the fishing industry, artisanal fishermen in Albion, Blaymont, Rosignol, and so on, fish price has gone up so expensive. Even Coras, Bangor Merry, and all of that gone up high. The fetching price now very high. It might touch Gilbaca price soon. And we have to understand that now, with them not even getting the monies at the sugar estates for working, they now got to go and buy food that is costing about 150% more. So a lot of them are suffering. And the PPP fooled them in another sphere of activity. And that is, you remember what we had done in the coalition, the 4Bs, where we give the kids breakfast, we give the kids boots, we provide a bus service for the kids to go to school and all of that. do you know that is far superior to the $19,000 benefit that they got? Far superior. And now they got to find all of these things. And it is hell. Estate people are very much suffering right now. Big time.
Correct.
And as I have been saying all along, that this sufferation will continue because you had to get a plan. We had a plan. It was a drastic plan. I spoke to sugar workers about it. You had to do something very, very hard in the sense of making the decisions. Termination is always going to be a hard decision. But if you don't terminate, the alternative is worse, because you got to pay them $1 billion and then you got to take it out of the treasury. You got to avoid other infrastructural works, other increases for public servants, nurses, all the COVID medicine that we got to buy and all of that. You shortchange them. And that is why it is important that the right sizing that we did is so important. Now that the PPP promised them, they're not keeping their promises. The people are punishing. But a lot of them don't want to come out and say that Ramjatan and Granger had it right. No, they want to still Surhawi Jagdeo and saying that Jagdeo is going to take them out. Not going to take them out. It is a lot of them comforting themselves that, we going to come out of it. Come out of nothing. It is worse. Sis Narang going to fool them, Jagdeo going to fool them, and Zulfikar will fool them. And that is what we're going to have, yeah.
You're so right, Mr. Ramjatan. When it comes to the severance pay, you're correct when you says double dipping. As the country would know it, widespread in the media, persons would know that the severed workers, they got their severance pay. So for the vice president to come out now and say that he would be given this $250,000, we say as the opposition, we say then give $250,000 to all severed workers, if that is the way in which we're going to go. And Mrs. Sears, what are your thoughts and comments on this?
Yeah, well, what I can comment, I agree fully with leader Kemraj Ramjatan with what he talked about, that the APNU plus AFC was the best government, especially when it comes to dealing with the sugar industry issues. It takes me back a little bit to what had happened when some of the estates were closed. And some persons thought, all right, we did the servants and we just left the folks there on their own, but we did not. At least through natural resources, what we had done is train some of those sugar workers who were at least laid off, right, so that they can develop themselves. They learned electrical, the mechanical, welding, and all these things. And from then, they had the opportunity, after receiving their certificate, head across the NATI and learn more, and some of them even graduated with their diplomas and their various certificate and move on. What I've observed is that the PPP don't have a plan for them, and you folks there in Barbados need to understand that. Look, you're being used as pawns. They will tell you what they need, what they expect you to, or what they think you want to hear, and then they, in return, they expect your votes. But you need to let the PPP know that you're much smarter than that. You have been used and reused and recycled all the time. So what they're promising you right now is not going to last long. They promise you a better life, especially when it comes to the oil and gas industry. But think about it, really and truly, what mechanisms are they putting in place to develop your mind and your skills and all these things? They expect you to go out into the fields there, continue to cut cane, and generations after generations to continue doing the same thing. But APNU plus AFC, particularly AFC, we have been championing the cause constantly to at least develop your skills and capacity building so you can function in the oil and gas industry. And Leader Ramjatan mentioned something just now. Even when it comes to fishing, how the industry is plummeting tremendously. And this is as a result of illegal fishing too. So even when it comes to our coast guards and all kind of things, APNU, AFC, during our tenure, and with AFC championing the cause, we try to build capacity when it comes to protecting our fishing industry.
Let me just add a point here. Sorry for the interruption. But
Go ahead,
today, even GAU is making the complaint that the government of Guyana is preferring overseas workers to local workers.
Yes, true.
It is in the Kaichur News today.
But that is their idea of local content, Mr. Ramjatan, and we spoke about this. We spoke about this at length, that when the government, when the PPP administration speak about local content, they are saying some Guyanese and foreign companies. That's their idea of local content.
Well, it is crazy because that is one of the things that we were doing. We knew that the oil sector is going to explode the employment opportunities, and you didn't want your cane cutters to continue cutting cane. Because apart from it being too backbreaking a job and a job that has no future, and then it is unprofitable, you wanted them to go get training so that they can take charge of other opportunities that will come by. Because the oil sector is going to be a lot of money coming in. Construction will be some big area that will be an indirect benefit. So start training them as carpenters, masons, electricians, whatever else, because you need that. They didn't do that. The PPP wants those East Indians to remain cane cutters so that their minds, they are going to forever vote for the PPP. Correct. When you start earning an income and then you can read more books and then you can read and whatever, you will start questioning the political party and its policies that you support. And at some point in time, you will come to realize that what they're doing is unreasonable. But they want to blindly make them fanatics all the time. And that is what's the whole idea behind allowing these people not to get training, to move ahead, and to advance into the modernism that we would like them to be in. No. Cut cane, buddy. You cut cane. And don't bother. And that is why today now GAU itself has to make the complaint. But them Trinidadians coming into Guyana and getting driver job.
Yeah.
Driver job, this job. Who caused that? And you can cutters there in Berbice and other peasant farmers and all the other persons in Berbice. You must understand that is what they're doing. And a whole heap of them. There might be other motivations for bringing in these people from overseas. You know, but whatever it is, immediacy, the immediate motivation, I believe, is to now fill the vacuum that ought to have been filled with these 5,000, 6,000 sugar workers that ought to have been retrained to take over these jobs. But no, bring them in. And then you get GAU now rowing. What GAU going to row about? I have been telling GAU since 4 years ago when I was made chairman of that committee to deal with this sugar. GAU, it is in your interest. Start training these people. No! They just want to collect their union dues, whatever it is every month, and they're going to get a couple of $40, $50 million every year, or every month, to deal with sugar workers and fatten themselves and all kind of thing, and fatten the PPP. That is what they do. They didn't want to deal long-term, because you got to start thinking long-term in Guyana. In view of especially the climate change and different weather patterns, which is also going to affect the sugar industry, you got to start thinking long-term. And long-term means getting people more skilled, more educated, and certified and so on. And that is what we are now lacking. And that is why today you have so much of big problems in the sugar estate areas. Blaemont is now gone to. It's gone to Iflot. You had problems at Iflot a couple of days ago. You had big problems in Albion. Well, Skeldon, we don't know, closed down completely. But the problem is not only that too, Juretta and Devin. The problem is the corruption. Now that the people are fighting for more, they want more relief. When they now get the relief is very corruptedly distributed.
That's a PPP.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've been saying
but
this.
Under the PPP, Mr. Ramjatan, under the PPP, we had Guyana ranked the highest level of corruption ever. and now the PP is back in office. We see the country climbing again on that scale. But
Oh, that's right.
you're speaking on the, you touch a little bit on the oil industry and all of that, and the vice president actually encouraging sugar workers that they're going to get employment in the oil sector and so forth. One of the things that we can look at, Mr. Ramson, at this point is the fact that the IMF actually, the projection for 2021 for Guyana is a GDP growth of 20.4%. And when you go to the ordinary man on the street and you say this, they're like, "Oh, but we're not feeling it. We're not feeling this 20.4% growth anywhere," and there's a reason for that. And I like to just break it down and make it very simple for Guyanese when we're on this program, because the fact of the matter is that the PPP's policy is private sector driven. That's what it is. And to make matters worse, to make sure that they don't deviate from that policy, to make sure that they keep in line with only benefiting the private sector, they went ahead and they took the former head for the private sector commission. Now he's an advisor to the government. So they are fusing together the private sector and government, and now all the policies that are coming out of government is private sector oriented, and this is the fact that we're looking at before us today. So nobody else is going to benefit. The government comes and they give policy and they say, oh, it's going to trickle down. The trickle down economics that we've been talking about. They say, oh, if we give the businessmen the money, they're going to invest and they're going to create jobs, and the money going to trickle down eventually. It doesn't work like that. It never worked like that. It's not going to work in 2021, not in Guyana, not under the PPP. That is the facts before us. Even John Pierre, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, really and truly, I agree with you, because we noticed even in the last two budget debates that we had in Parliament, everything is pro-private sector. That is, and the private sector, all their earnings go to the top 1%. And when it comes to trickle-down economics, the small man, the man in the street, the hustlers, people who are selling greens and doing what, it don't reach down to them. Right now, everybody in this country feeling that terrible, terrible squeeze. Even if you're working for a decent salary, you cannot even provide for your family in a way you would expect. Imagine if somebody now who barely make a little $5,000 a week, how are they surviving? Especially mothers in this country suffering the most, and we know we have a lot of single parents out there. They can't afford to send their children to school. They can't afford to even feed them. And who is even thinking about them, especially when a hungry child comes to them and says, "Mommy, I gotta get this. I'm hungry." That would make anybody lose their minds. And that is what the PPP has brought this country to, down to its knees. There's no trickle-down economics. The ones at the top, that is who's benefiting all. And I know you folks here in Berbice and throughout Guyana, y'all know it, but you guys need to speak up and let the government, the installed regime know that y'all is stupid.
That is so true. I want to say it is one of the reasons that we had paid special attention to public servants. We knew that they had a bad deal prior to when we went into government, and we increased their salaries, I think, right up to $70-something thousand per month. Yeah. And you know what was the minimum wage of private sector workers? It was left at about $45,000. And we pleaded with them that you now got to up the thing up to about $70,000 too. And they were saying it will do their businesses bad. What kind of thing? When you got private sector being given all of these extensive benefits and so on, and they're still paying their workers at the bottom there, the $45,000 a month. What the hell is going on? How could they pay rents? How could they pay for the food, their electricity bill and all of that? And when you try to tell them that, you are not doing very well as private sector, you really got to do better, Jagdeo, of course, said, no, you leave the people. Well, you left the people. And a lot of these private sector employees today, Regent Street stores, thousands of these girls and other areas and so on, they're literally working so hard, long hours, and not getting what is called a livable wage. So that these are the kinds of things that are going to make this country soon explode, if I may utilize that term, because a lot of people can't take it more. And that is why so many other social problems are the consequences of this high cost of living and unemployment rates and so on. The suicide rates, especially in the Berbice area and estate area, I come back, domestic violence rates are the highest in the country. People beating up their wife, they're beating up their children, doing all manner of things. There is a seething violence in our communities. I was hearing about it today, talking to some people from Lenora Katrina area. Well, what is going on? And the women leaving the man, going away because he can't bring in money and all kind of thing. And this kind of thing, even I noticed Vindi remarked recently that there are increases in suicides, big time increase in suicides. Yeah. So what here? We got 887 people done dead with COVID. Another couple hundred gone dead now with suicide. And how much hand are going to get chopped out and this and that because of the violence at a personal level? Where are we going? And then the security of this country as a result of a throwback into kind of an unprofessional, the unprofessionalism of the police force now is something that is making life all the more difficult. I remember we were once very poor people, my father and grandfather and so on, but they managed to live happy lives with very small amounts of money because of their circumstances in that regard. They could have bought whatever they wanted and so on. The police were professional. They said a number of things were far better then. When you compare it to now, you can give a man $73,000, $75,000. You could give him $150,000. But still he feels unhappy because when he goes out, he could be robbed. He could be hit in the face by some madman on the road, or his windscreen could be busted up as a result of that madman and so on. And so the insecurities are so much rampant all over the place, and that is not a nice thing. And Guyana certainly is not on the move forward. It is on a move backward. We are backsliding. And all as a result of this government.
Yes, Mr. Ramses, and you touched on a very important aspect there when you spoke about the fact that whilst we were in office, every single year there was an increase in the wages and salaries for public service workers, and the private sector was reluctant to do the same. And a lot of times we talk about we talk about the fact that the government is so private sector driven, and so some persons may wonder, what's the big deal? Well, the fact is that when you think about it, think about the private sector, the business owners, their aim, their number one on their list, their priority is to maximize profit. And in order for them to maximize profit, they need to minimize their costs. And one of the costs is labor, the cost of labor, wages, salary, ordinary people going to deal with. So the least they could pay you, the more money they will be making. So now when the government is fused in with the private sector, the government now is supposed to be acting on the behalf of the Guyanese people. The government is supposed to not be interested in maximizing profit, but actually be interested in increasing the standard of living of every Guyanese family. But now the government, as I'm saying, they're fused with the private sector. They have the former head of the private sector as an advisor to the government. So they're becoming one. And when that happens, the government's interest and their priorities shift from actually improving the standard of living for Guyanese people, for yourself, your families, for myself and my family. And now the priority is to maximize profit and fill the pockets. This is what's going on all over. Devon, I know you're from Region 10. What's going on there? What's it like there?
Well, Jaretta and Cameron, it's a lot that's happening, right? But I want to talk about really two things that I think sometimes we seem to overlook, particularly when it comes to the Berbice River itself, because sometimes we say quarantine and New Amsterdam, but along the Berbice River, talking from, let's say, from Deville all the way to Kokwani, and more particularly Araimo. Years ago, under the PPP, they took out a very important element from those folks, especially what contributed to economic stability to some extent, and that was a steamer. We had farmers all lined up all across throughout the Berbice River, and they plugged that steamer out there, out of that river, and you found a lot of persons moved away from farming, and of course now what they're finding, they're making their income off of illegal activities and stuff like that. But the PPP cut off the Berbice River, right? They took out when they removed that steamer, people had to move because that is what they depended on for their livelihood. And then we see a repeat of that happening, particularly in Araima with the bauxite company there, Russell. Russell moved out from Araima. They did not give them any servers, nothing. And right now, those folks up there are suffering. So you can tell the temperament of the PPP is that they don't care about people. They want votes. They will come and tell you whatever they want, what they expect you to hear, and so on, and forget about you, your entire livelihood. And we are seeing families there broken apart. And rightfully, what Cameron mentioned just now, women leaving the man because man can't provide no more. But he can't do anything else. That is what he's known for all these years, whether it be farming or working at the bauxite company. And even coming home here recently in Region 10, we've been dealing with the issue with some of the employees at Bosai, the bauxite company, going on strike because they wanted a 10% increase rather than a 5.5% increase. And I can say, as it is right now, those workers return to work pending negotiations, which is going to continue on Monday. But I can say to you that the bauxite company, Bosai Minerals in Guyana, they have been making money. There's great demand for bauxite ore across the world. They have, sometimes you find 2 or 3 ships coming in on a daily basis. So it's not like they're not making money. COVID did not affect the production of bauxite ore. So why is it so difficult to give these people what they deserve? And we have been championing the cause of making representation for those employees. And we're hoping that throughout the negotiations heading into next week, we're going to get that 10% that they're asking for. But
I want to emphasize one of the very big points, and that has to be the inequality of the incomes of the company as against workers. It is happening almost all over the world, where these big companies, well, in Guyana, the Bosai and the other companies in bauxite or other businesses and so on, they're making the big dollars. These other companies, like in Quarantine, the Exxon Mobil, in Essequibo, in Demerara here, all the other companies that are shortchanging workers are making big profits, shortchanging the workers. But what they're also doing, and the literature on the subject is very important for us to read, because capitalists all across the world, they unite. Marx had said, workers of the world unite, capitalists unite. And they know how to ensure that they can make influences in the government of the day to lower their tax rates, to lower so many things, and also to allow them to have a free rein in relation to what salaries they're going to pay their contracted workers. As a matter of fact, almost all their workers are contracted. There isn't anything called public service commission inside of a private sector kind of arrangement. And then they pay them all manner of things. And sometimes they don't even pay their NIS into the NIS institution. And a lot of them can't, whenever they reach their age, can't collect their NIS benefits. So the thievery sometimes happen in that context. And so the inequalities are increasing exponentially, as they call it, more and more, getting wider and wider. And we have to understand that got to be halted. And you know what? We had started that process, but it is carried on because of Jagdeo and Zulfikar and all of them in the PPP now. They got plenty friends that got the big monies. And these friends influence them as to what they must do, like cut down the mangrove at West Demerara, ensure that they don't have an environmental impact plan, assessment, what is called an environmental impact assessment done before they could do things. It will be cheaper because an environmental assessment takes about a year and a half, sometimes for big arrangements, big development. And it also requires millions of dollars to pay the experts to do it. They want to cut that cost. Well, but when you do that, you're not planning properly. And so you could probably, if you now want to build a bridge without an environmental assessment plan, you could very well get the bridge being somewhat defective, and then it can collapse and kill people. All of that. You got to do soil testing and this and that. A variety of experts got to be. But the capitalists, that is the rich people here in Guyana, they just tell them, do away with it. Vince Adams has now told us that, having chatted with some of the people in the present EPA, this government is now interfering with that professional body at the environmental level, and telling them, well, you pass that environmental plan, you pass this, you pass that, and let the people go and do the projects. That is not how it is supposed to. At an environmental level, the EPA is like the judges that have to make the decision based on their professionalism, not a politico from a ministry says, we friend, you pass them there, yeah? And that is how it's done. But all of this is happening in this country right now.
Well, that's the
PPP. Go ahead. Go ahead,
I'm
Zurek.
saying that's the PPP. That's the way in which they operate. When they go into office, they don't care about the way in which anything is still supposed to be done. All they care about is to make sure that the friends and family get what they want. And on the friends and family note, Mr. Ramjitan, allow me to deviate to the fact of the friends and family over there in Dubai, and the whole show that went down. You know, a lot of persons can make a lot of jokes off of it and so forth, but the taxpayers' dollars are being spent. And when you see a group of persons going over to Dubai representing Guyana that actually have no business being on that trip whatsoever, you question what our monies are really being spent on, if this is just a big vacation for some persons, as it would appear to be. And the government is yet to give any level of transparency to how those persons were chosen to go on that trip. They're yet to say the cost of the trip altogether. And so many questions are still to be answered for that particular trip. But we would know that the PPP, this is, I think, an entire news article or a document was done prior to 2015 when the PPP was in office that spoke about the family tree of the PPP and the way in which they conduct national business as though they're conducting personal business. And again, we see them just over a year of them being in office, back to square one. The same group of people, can't change it.
Right. Devin, just let me say, prior to 2015, that is exactly what they were doing. Remember? We used to call it Bariat, the whole Bariata go overseas. So you got, let's say, a one issue. So you send your relevant minister or you send your relevant technical expert. Now they're carrying a sing-along team and all kind of people. Look, it is not nice. It is not nice. And it is all coming back. It will haunt us. But the PPP feels that all of them they carry there, they take out the photograph, they go bring them back a house here, and then the family and so on, and then they're going to vote PPP. Remember, the PPP is an elections machine, and that is what it does. So you don't care anything about the economy and how it's going to stop the sufferation of people. They know that elections is a couple of years from now, and they're going to do this. It's buying the votes. And Guyanese must understand that they must not be ordinarily be bought like that. But of course, people are humans. They're not angels. They're not sometimes very rational with these things. And although we're going to cry our voices out, they can get the votes, because them people that get the trip to go over there on government taxpayers' money hardworking people's money and so on. They're going to say, what Ramjatan attack? What nonsense for Ramjatan? You know? And even if you say the money should have been prioritized to go to the sugar industry for another relief and so on, because it can come up about $40-50 million that they have to spend with hotel expenses and trips and this and what they call allowances to spend and go and eat lunch and whatever it is. It's a good set of money. It will come up. But if you tell them to hand the sugar workers that, and you sugar workers must know, they didn't do that. But there it is, you have it. They're going to say, well, Abinami Carrier of Dubai, come and vote for me. They might even get plenty of them to go on the social media and write about the genius of Bharat Jagdev's leadership and that kind of thing. And Anil Nandalal's legal acumen and so on.
Yes.
Yes.
I think there's a term to describe it, Mr. Ramjatan.
Yes, that's what it is.
I think there's a term to describe that behavior of the PPP. I think it's like quid pro quo. Something for something. Everything that they do is for something. They don't do something without expecting a reward, some return to their actions. So when they do something for ordinary Guyanese, they don't see the results come. They don't reap the benefits immediately. They don't see it as a direct benefit that they're going to receive. So they just do things for their friends and family that they can get direct returns and rewards from.
That's correct.
Now, Deepan, I see you are going to jump in there. Let me allow you to jump in.
Yeah, I just want to comment that, the PPP, it seems to me that they have an endless Guyanese taxpayers credit card, only exclusive to the PPP government. And what we as Guyanese need to understand that we are paying for their luxurious trips, right? So let us hold them accountable. Let us ask the question. And I know the citizens out there, you always think that, the politicians, particularly the opposition, have to ask all the questions. But you of yourself, y'all need to start asking these questions. What was the objective of some of these persons going there? Yes, we know we had the artists and they had to put Guyana on stage and promote what we're doing here. But then the whole barrage of them, the whole cabal, who went there? What was the reason? What was the objective? What are the expectations coming out of all these negotiations? And a lot of them, we only hear, by the way, through the media. There's nobody going to give a press conference or something saying, look, we're going to Dubai, we want to achieve this, or any form of consultation. They're doing whatever they want. And it's time the Guyanese put an end into that. That is poor governance. You can say over the last years when APNU, AFC were in government, the amount of consultations, even to go to a trip to even Trinidad, we went to did press conferences. This is what we're going to expect. What do you think? If you have inputs, follow the channels. But that they don't operate like that. Why? Because they don't care about Guyanese. They care about themselves and their families and cronies.
Yeah,
that needs to stop.
And when we had sent a team out there in our administration, we sent, I think, Mr. Winston Jordan, David Patterson, to look into the matter with the energy, the solar panel and things like that, and a fund from the Islamic Bank. Winston Jordan was there, and I think Mr. Greenwich. And you send these people for their sphere of activity that they will go and talk to the relevant person and come back and try as best to get we managed to get the Islamic Bank indicating that they're going to lend us money for certain special projects and so on. And the United Arab Emirates, I think they went to Kuwait and a couple of the other Middle Eastern countries there. And they came back with a lot of things. I want to know what it is that they're going to come back. I am hearing now that the people sign up a MOU with them. I don't know what that means and what are the benefits to accrue to Guyana as a result of that signing of the MOU.
Yes.
But it is a lot of chit-chat. The PPP is very well known for its propaganda skills. And they're going to fool the eyes of the Guyanese people. Oh, we can get MOU and so on and so on. And then they're going to use yeah. But it is not anything beneficial. Nothing will happen. You bet my bottom dollar. I will bet my bottom dollar. And that nothing will come out of it. So, that we have to correct.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct, Mr. Ramjitan. But I want to go back on something Devin touched on a bit, and when he spoke about lack of consultation and all of that, there's no information being put out there. I would remind the Guyanese public that when we were in office, every single week after cabinet, there was a briefing. Mr. Harmon went out there, he gave a brief to the press after cabinet on this is
That's
what
right.
we're going to do. If there were trips coming up, these are the persons that are going to be heading out, and this is what they're heading out to do. The people's business was not something that was done in secrecy as the PPP is operating right now. And on that note, let me just bring. I want to start a conversation this evening at this point actually on COP26, because COP26 is going to be starting on the 20th. The opening is on the 31st of this month. And we are yet, the people of this country is yet to hear anything from the government, the sitting installed government as they are, about what their plans are, what is on the agenda for COP26. How is Guyana going to be represented? What does the delegation look like? And there are so many questions out there. Now, for persons listening, COP26 is this is going to be the largest discussion on climate change since the Paris Agreement was signed, I think it's in 2015. This is the largest since then, and basically countries have to go and they have to present their plan. I think they have to present a document, I believe, called the NDC, the national determine contributors, and how the country actually plan, what they actually plan to do to contribute towards the fighting climate change. Guyana is yet to produce even a draft document to this regard. And I want to just tell persons at this point also that at that level of climate change discussion, countries that are going out, their delegation, one of the most important part of their delegations is the indigenous people of the country, because climate change affects that group of persons the most. The government of Guyana, again, is yet to say who will be representing the indigenous community from this country and so forth. And again, the lack of transparency is glaring. The PPP knows not how to conduct themselves in a transparent manner. So on the 31st, just days away, we're going to have the largest discussion on climate change. Decisions will be made at an international level. And the PPP did not have the decency to even attempt to have a bottom-up approach to how we're going to tackle this all together, because the persons at the bottom are yet to be consulted with. We are yet to know what the government plans are at this forum. Mr. Ramjitan,
Well,
I
it
know
is
you're part of this. I
yeah.
know you
Well,
are part of the whole process, and we had developed the we
green
have
policy.
developed the state, the
That's
green
right.
state development strategy as opposed
Right,
to the low carbon development strategy. And everybody would know, anybody that actually took a look at those documents would know that the green state development strategy is an upgrade to the LCDS. So the people went back into office, of course, they said they're going back to the LCDS. So they're basically saying that, oh, well, the coalition took 20 steps forward, but we're going to take like 30 steps backwards and go back to the little petty amateur document that we left this country with. And that's what's going on right now.
Yeah. I want you to know, probably it is not being emphasized all around in Guyana by the press and by other political party leaders and so on. But this thing has to do with the fact that the PPP feel ashamed now in view of all that they have granted back to ExxonMobil in relation to emissions as a result of flaring. I mean, Exxon is flaring right now. And they're saying that we were the ones that caused that to happen. Vince Adams was on this program a couple weeks ago and was on other programs indicating and explaining clearly that that is not the truth. But Jagdeo lies all the time, quite frankly. And so you have the situation whereby they wouldn't want to tell the world what they're doing in relation to the green policy and how to cut emissions and how to save the world and all of that, because they are actively allowing huge amounts of natural gas that are in excess, that are coming up with the oil, to be burnt and flared. And that is causing massive carbonization. Also, they have allowed them now to say that that compressor that you got there and that you walk in, we're going to take the contaminated water. That is what is affecting the fishing industry, in my opinion. Because if 10 years before I got some statistics, this is the fishery that you used to bring in as catches. And now since Exxon is there and this contaminated water is going back into the ocean there at very high temperatures, and you're getting reduced production of the fishing, it means then that that is also something that is a pollutant in this green or the low carbon development strategy that is contradicting that low carbon development strategy. So they don't want that. Then for purposes of developers, they are violating all the standards of the Environmental Protection Agency and the regulations. The biggest that we have seen that caused so much, big publicity was the mangrove being cut. But not only that, I understand within the interior areas, we got some rivers and so on now being polluted by the big gold mining that are going on by some of these big gold mining companies. And the water going in back there, and water that Amerindians would normally drink and cook with and wash and all of that, they can't do that now. It's discolored. And so there is rampant dismantling of the environmental standards that we have set there. And when we brought Mr. Vince Adams, because remember, Joretta, it is always to have competent people that could deal with ExxonMobil, deal with people like the man that they put in the coconut shell inside of the that river in Essequibo there. I think it's
Yes.
Alfonso them. Yes. You got to get a powerful environmental head. And there could have been no powerful one more than Vince Adams. And when you cut him out and you send him back to America, you want all of this to happen. And so they are doing that for purposes of ensuring their big businesses at the detriment of climate, simply because we are regarded as a what do you call it? As a country that has
carbon sink.
Yeah, carbon sink, in the sense that our emissions is far less than in the world than other countries. Very, very much far less, because we produce not as much emissions.
Correct.
As a result of the forest that we got. The forest absorb the emissions, right? Whereas industry cause it to go high. But we have a kind of a net carbon sink. It's zero almost, or less than zero, and so on. And that is important. But what they're doing here at an active level is to show the world that they don't care nothing about this emissions and so on. So all the cheap talk about going back to low carbon development strategy and so on is all a sham. It's all a sham. And that is why, more and more the countries like even Norway is very concerned now. I don't know if they're going to get that $80 million that they're talking about. So it is important that in view of all of these that are happening, flaring, contaminated water, cutting mangrove, all this thing inside of the interior with mining and all, it is terrible, and it is not keeping our commitments. Remember that I gave a speech in Parliament that they're bringing in old tire again, old car again. All of these things are, detrimental to the environment. And we have commitments under the Paris Agreement and so on. We have taken on international obligations which we got to meet. But Jagdeo don't mind that. He wants businessmen to just open up and do all kinds of contaminated industry and this and that. And we're going to get, health standards in this country and safety standards are going to go down as a result. And that is not a good thing for this country at all.
But Mr. Ramjatan, when you spoke a bit on the fact that there is so much contamination being put into the waterways, and indigenous people of this country that utilize those waters are being affected, and again, it's because the PPP's policy is never to protect the people, but actually to make money. And we would remember prior to 2015, again, whilst the PPP were in office, we had the largest spill. We had a cyanide spill that came under Omai, because the PPP never cared about the environment and how they actually they never actually monitored companies that actually use chemicals that are dangerous to the environment, because their major concern is always the kickback that they're getting from having the company operate, and so on and so forth. So again, we don't expect anything different from this administration. The only way that it's going to change is for them to not be there. Once they continue to be there, we're going to continue to be going in a downward slope. We're going to be continuing to see GDP numbers coming out that are looking large and lovely, whilst the ordinary Guyanese family are suffering and cannot pay for basic food items. We're going to continue to see the inflation rates rising and so forth, because all they're interested in is to make sure that they cushion the private sector so that they benefit the most from the oil sector altogether. And again, we're going to say at this point that the PP spoke a lot about the oil sector before they went into office, and they put a lot of emphasis that they're not going to be looking heavily on the oil sector and so on. But today we will see that the numbers that all the projections coming forward, the only thing that's looking nice is the numbers coming out from the oil sector, because when it comes to the non-oil GDP of the country, that's a whole different setting altogether. The PP is yet to get anywhere with that. Like Mr. Ramjatan was talking about earlier, when it comes to the fishing industry, those numbers are on the decline. When it comes to sugar, it's going way down again. These are the facts that we're presenting to you again. But Devin, I know you spoke somewhat, but I'm going to allow you to put in some more. We're just about program time, so let me just allow you to give some more remarks on the content.
To add to the conversation, particularly when it comes to the mining industry and the environmental effects of what is happening. Guyana signed on to the Minamata Convention years ago, of which was an active program whereby we were working with the miners to stop using mercury, because mercury, when it gets into the water, it gets into the fishes, and then we eat the Amerindian folks particularly, they eat the fish, and then it affects them. It can have cancerous effects and all of these things, right? And what we recognize is that these mining camps are not being monitored like they should. Not only mining, the forestry concessions that we have. Anybody could go now and chop down a log and then go sell it and make some money. Is a wild west country. That's what it seems that we're heading towards under the PPP administration. So we need to get back to those standards which the AP and UFC has established. And people need to understand that their health comes first, because if you don't have health, you don't have anything. You can lose your life out of pure negligence or ignorance, particularly what is being offered under the PPPC. I know we're closing off. I want to touch just on a few things, particularly as Guyanese. As Guyanese, we need to understand what is our worth. You have the power, especially in your hands. You are the one who go to the polls and vote. And very soon, I believe you're going to be called upon to go to the polls again, especially when we win this petition, Jaretta and Kemraj. And you are going to be held to the task to vote for a party who represents your interests, who cares about you, not the party, PPP, the red party, the cup party, who is saying to you, we can only use you when we need you, and after we get what we want, we forget about you. And that is what is happening in this country. I know there's going to come a time when we have to focus on diversification. And I know that the sugar industry workers, you were a bit hurt. You thought that the AP and UF, didn't care about you, that's why we shut down the factories. No, we understood your worth. And everything has to do with economics and also focus on capacity building because we want to bring out the best in you. We want to see you rise above just cutting fields, sugarcane constantly and generations after generation, working for a little $1,000 or $2,000 whenever. You're not worth that. The future of Guyana is a good life, not only for just one person or the top 1%, not just the only friends did. You of yourself, you're worth more than that. And when we start seeing ourselves in that capacity, well, then we will enjoy this beautiful country what we call Guyana.
Thank you, Devin, so much for that. I agree with everything that you said. Mr. Ramzatan, I allow you to give your closing remarks at this time.
Well, I want Guyanese, Barbicians especially, to understand that you have to, again, not be taken in by these big lies that are coming forth. Big lies. Even the other day, I noticed, and we should have spoken something about it, like what is happening at the Public Accounts Committee. We got a backlog of reports to be scrutinized. And I understand that you, Juretta, and Jermaine, and a couple of others passed a motion to get the work done. What Gail gone and say? That we ain't got nothing for do. We ain't working now. So we could work every day of the week. They, as minister, got plenty work for do. They don't want to scrutinize the accounts.
Correct.
Scrutiny of the accounts is one of the biggest event in Parliament. And that is so important because without scrutiny of the monies that we spend, it can very well mean corruption. And especially with a thieving set of government officials in the PPP like them ministers we got there, it is a lot of thiefiness that will happen. And that is why we got to work overtime. But they don't want to work overtime. And so people must understand this. The government today, when they wanted it, I remember when David Patterson, in our administration, we had asked for every day of the week to get the backlog come off. Now we did 2016, dealing with 2016 reports. And today, the Gail Teixeira saying no, she only 1 day a week she want for work. And we in a parliament dealing with other issues, and she's a parliamentarian. So now she's saying that she is advisor to president or minister for this and whatever. They mustn't come to work. Well, let the opposition scrutinize the thing. The opposition can do that. Well, you want to be there as government. You have spent it, and you're saying you spent it legally. Well, let the opposition scrutinize the thing now because it is legal. You ain't got nothing to fear. But they got plenty thing to fear. So that is why they want to be there to confuffle the whole country with all kinds of explanations, get Wanegel to behave the bad way he just behaved, very low, cuss down people and so on, and shout and talk hard, and then the work gets stifled. And then we're going to remain in 2016, 2017, and so on. So we can't come down to 2020, like how all the flood relief and the COVID relief was corruptly distributed. We can't deal with that. So understand, Barbicians, that the PPP is back again on its old track of corruption, but we in the Alliance for Change will go on that anti-corruption crusade and will bring all these facts to you. I want you to stay abreast, keep on watching us, and we are going to bring these facts to you. And along with the way too, we are going to internationalize these facts. We're going to send them to the people in Congress in America. We're going to send it to the British, showing how all the dismantling of that police force, they spent $3.4 million US here, and all gone to the dogs now. Look at your security system. Look how the police force behaving. And so we got to go and tell these officials. The PPP, it seems, only know how to win elections, and they feel that once you win elections, they're going to run the country however. That is not democracy. Democracy is that after you win the elections, you must then govern properly with accountability, with transparency, and with the rule of law. And of course, ensuring that people's rights are always entrenched and enjoyed and can be exercised. This is important, but the PPP don't care nothing about that. They're on a running campaign, taking up all these officials wanting to jail Paul Slow, all kinds of things they're doing. And they want to provoke a violent reaction. But be smart. We're not going to get into violence and talk. We're going to talk to their constituencies. We're going to talk to the Babishans. We're going to talk to the Cane Cutters and say, you bargained badly by voting for them. Thank you, and a very good night to all Babishans.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. That unfortunately, that's all the program time we have for this evening. Please remember to join us once again next Saturday at 8 p.m. as we bring to you the facts, as we continue to scrutinize the government of the day. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.